before we start the bubble diagram, there's another thing we need to have a look at, which is this. So this now is a framework which takes into account the fact that we are going to teach functional vocabulary first. And another thing that's important is that we have to teach pronunciation. Now, why do we teach pronunciation? Absolutely, first of all, because every time a learner opens his mouth, anything might come out. Any part of pronunciation might be necessary. So you can teach the grammar of a language bit by bit. You can teach the vocabulary of the language bit by bit. The pronunciation, you need everything immediately. And so we start down here with, I'll make this bigger so that you can see. I'm familiar with the sound, intonation, and prominence system of the language, whatever the language is. And then we learn numbers and time. Then we learn the functional vocabulary to describe spatial relationships and simple actions with tangible objects. You can see that the accent is put immediately on, the emphasis is put on the spoken language. And over here, I'm starting to get familiar with the writing system, whatever it might be. And then now I can use the functional vocabulary with facility to talk about more of the relationships between the objects and the people present in the class. And then gradually, my vocabulary is expanding. So now we're starting to get into lexical vocabulary. And behind that, you can see now we have a kind of jigsaw puzzle. And the reason for the jigsaw puzzle is that contrary to the European framework, where everybody is going to be a businessman, basically, right? But what about if you're an orchestra conductor, you're a conductor of an orchestra, you might need this kind of vocabulary. Whereas if you're going to work in a nursery with plants, you might need this kind of vocabulary. And so the idea of the jigsaw puzzle is that you learn the vocabulary that you need, and not the vocabulary that is decided in advance for you by some sort of methodology.
In curriculum or
a curriculum, yes, absolutely. Yeah. What you're going to learn.
Or a textbook.
Or a textbook, absolutely, because a textbook forces you into a certain amount of vocabulary and does so very early, which is a real shame. There's another thing important with this is that when you have this, when you have the what Catania called the spirit of the language, that's to say you understand how the language creates all these relationships, it's very easy to drop the vocabulary in, the vocabulary that you need. We do that all the time in our own language, right? I come across a new word and it's in a context and I understand the context, and so I can understand the word. And so this is really quite an important point. We do this functional part first, and then when we get to about here, level 2, beginning of level 3 into level 3, we start expanding the vocabulary.